So I recently added 2 AI features to my app, and I wanted to make a video literally just showing you what these were and how was the whole process of adding them. I know a lot of people are a little bit against using or adding AI to your apps, and they think it's just gonna get sloppy, but I think actually it's quite the opposite, because sometimes you can just make your users' life so much easier by adding some mini AI features. There are 2 problems that I had with Snipcast. This is just my code presentation tool that I use in a lot of YouTube, and if you follow me on Twitter, I also use it a lot, and has this cool thing where you can have code blocks that magically animate. Like if you pay attention to Hello World, you're gonna see that the whole thing moves, and you can also like mute some lines or also highlight a line if you want, if you click 3 times on it. And one of the problems that I used to have is that when you have a long code block like this one here and you want to create some kind of step-by-step presentation, you're gonna have to duplicate the code yourself and delete the lines one by one to create these steps so that it magically animates itself. So one way that I used AI to fix this problem and get rid of this manual work is you basically have this button. When you click on it, you're gonna see generating code steps, and just after a few seconds, this is gonna use AI behind the scenes to just generate these steps for you. And as you can see here, it's step 1 out of 10, and we have this title that tells you exactly what each step does. So import define config, define configuration object, add plugin array, import TanStack start, add TanStack start plugin, add sitemap option, and enable sitemap. Like it just goes step by step along the way. You also have some options here. You can, for example, decide you don't want to mute the lines that are not changed. This is relevant, for example, here. If you turn this on, you see that only the lines that change are highlighted. You can turn this off, and you can also decide if you want to have the title in the bottom right or if you want to have it as a comment. Let me turn this one on, then it's visible. So instead of having a comment, you can also have a title, or you can just hide this description all along. And once you're happy with the setup, I'm gonna go with title for this. You can click on confirm, and this literally sets the whole thing for you. And having to make this manually was such a pain, and this just speeds up the whole thing. And I don't think this makes this app sloppier. Actually, it's quite the opposite. It makes the whole thing really easy to work with. And the second problem that I had was this is an auto-generated title. So every time that you create a new project, here they're called snips. So you just end up with this new snip with the number on it. And I found myself personally not changing this title, just being lazy, not changing it. And I'm sure that the other users are not changing it. And for that, I have added this mini button here. You can just click on it and it should generate the title for you. And if the user even doesn't click on this, once they want to export it as a video, if you click here on export, I'm going to select video. In the background, as you can see now, let me close this, TanStack start sitemap. And just like this, you just make the user's life way easier. So I want to show you the code setup behind these two. As you probably have guessed, changing the title is actually way easier because here we're just dealing with a string. But when it comes to animating the code, we are dealing with structured data. We're also streaming the response back from the backend to the front end. So we're actually showing these steps flowing in real time into the UI. So let me show you how the code looks like. By the way, this video is brought to you by TestSprite, which is an AI testing agent that gets rid of manual repetitive QA testing. They have just revamped the whole UI so you can easily track the whole progress of the tests, and you can also replay recordings of the interactions. And with the new editor, you can also intuitively modify the tests on the fly. And to wrap it up, you can also connect it to GitHub directly, and it can run on every pull request. They are right now also hosting a hackathon, which you can enter and win some really good prizes. If you're interested, I'm gonna put the link to all of that in the description down below. Now back to the video. Let's get started with this title here. So Snipcast is actually created with TanStack start. So anytime you're dealing with AI, you never want to make a request from the front end to the AI. You always want to go through the server. And this is exactly what I'm doing here, using this create server function that comes from TanStack start for the input. So we're talking about get snip title. So get snip title is just a server function, and it expects this input over here. So it just expects frames, which is an array of objects, and inside each object you can have content, and the type of this entry is either going to be code or markdown. Actually, we also support markdown, so I also have it here. And I'm also passing in this Supabase auth middleware. I'm not going to go into it right now, that would be too much for this video, but if you're interested, I could make another video for that. And this just makes sure that you have to be authenticated if you want to call this function. And And actually this doesn't read any data from backend or anything like that. You just get the user input here, and then we are making API call to Gemini, and we are using the AI SDK for talking to the AI, because it just gives you this very straightforward API that is consistent no matter which model you're using. So you can also use other models, and not only from Google, you can also use from Anthropic or OpenAI. You just have to change this one line of code if you want to make that change. And for that, we are passing in this system prompt, which is very important that you pass in your system prompt in the system field, and then you pass in the data as a prompt. So in the system, I just said, hey, create a snip title based on the given frames. It should be a concise descriptive title. Keep it short, ideally less than 5 words. I have added these 2 lines here just because it used to give me some very long titles. And when it comes to system prompt, you just have to try and see the results, and then you probably have to add some more instructions to say things like keep it under 5 words. And this is where things get interesting. In the output, you can actually also pass in a Zod schema. And here, this is a very simple one. We're just passing in an object with a title, and the schemas is also really good to pass in this describe field. We just give a description for each one of the fields, and the other API call that we're making, we use this a lot. So this is all the backend part. I'm going to show you the other endpoint afterwards. It's a bit more complex because it also has streaming types to the front end, but let me show you where this is used, this get snip title. So here there's this top bar component, and I have a used mutation from TanStack start. And the interesting thing here is that I'm not passing in all the data to the API call. I am actually filtering out or just taking the fields that are relevant for figuring out the title. So in Snipcast, you can actually also set a lot of different settings like the background blur or the layout. You can change that. You can also add some comments, change the theme. It's a lot of data that is saved in each snip, and all of this stuff is literally irrelevant for the AI, so you just don't want to add it since it's just irrelevant. And that's why I just created this frames object, just extracting all the data that I need, and then we make this API call to our own backend. And once that's there, on success, we have this on change snip name function that it gets called and sets the title. This mutation is also used to show a loading state when that is happening, or to disable the title when that is happening. Let me click on it here. As you can see, it's disabled, and TanStack Vite sitemap setup. A little bit different, still nice to have. Now let me go to the other example, which is a little bit more complex. But before we do that, we can maybe play with it a little bit just to see what we're dealing with here. And I want you to pay attention to the steps that are generated when I click on this button. You can see that the numbers change automatically because the data is shown directly. Okay, this is failing. Let me try again. Okay, it's 1 of 9 and 1 of 10. If you bring back the video, you're going to see that it changed in real time. So the user theoretically could also already see the results even before the generation is done, which is so cool. So if you have any kind of app that has something that is repetitive, I really urge you to try to add some AI features for that. And the interesting thing here is that once you have made this API call to the AI and you have the result, you can still adjust how this is displayed. So you can still choose, for example, that you want to mute the lines or not, or you want to change the title to a comment, or just hide it at all. So let me show you how I did this. So when it comes to the server code, this time in the input, we literally just have one field, which is the code itself, but the output is way more complex. So the output that we're expecting is an object with steps, which is an array, and each step has a code. This is a string with a description, the adjusted code, keep the new lines. This was important because it was just outputting everything in one line without the new lines, and this small sentence here just fixed that problem. So it's a lot of trial and error. Then there's a title, a concise, helpful explanation of what this step does. Don't include the new lines, just a general, concise description, goal of what this step is doing. And I also had to add, don't repeat obvious function names as an information. And I'm also defining a description for the steps to create the final code. Each step introduces one small change. And inside the function call, you're gonna see that it's a little bit different. So here we are dealing with the generator function. That's why we have this small asterisk here. And we are using stream text. So this returns a stream that we can use to stream the data to the front end. And the system prompt is also a little bit more complex than the other example. And this this is where things get right now really interesting. We are using this for await loop to read the content of this partial output stream. So the type of this partial response is just the same as this output here. It's just that everything can be undefined. And that's why we have this check over here to make sure that the steps are there. And then we use this yield keyword to generate a new response. And when it comes to streaming data in TanStack Start, there are actually two ways that you can use. The first one was using this readable stream to add messages to it, and then you can close it at the end. You can use this await streaming response function, and in the front end you can get this response and have this while loop checking if there's still a message. Quite a bit of code, and I decided to go for the other approach, which is to use async function generators. And as you can see, this approach is way shorter. You just pass in a generator function in the handler and you just yield every new result. And on the other side, in the front end, you can just use this for await. And this is what we're using in the code. Okay, now back to the application. One of the challenges was to actually find out which line changed in every step. When you go to a different line, you can see the changed lines that are highlighted here, right? And my first approach was to also get this field from AI just by having another field, changed line indexes. And I quickly found out that was actually not always correct. And that's why I have added this function, get changed line indexes. And this one literally just compares two code blocks and finds out the indexes that have changed. So this is some kind of algorithm that Claude generated for me to just figure out which line changed, and also takes into consideration that you can have some changed lines literally in between and not just in beginning and in the end. And I think that's why it's a bit complex. I don't know exactly what it does, but I found like when you have the possibility to have a deterministic answer, then it's really worth it to just have a real JavaScript function running. You can also test if you want, instead of relying on the AI every time. And also for these other fields here, like to mute the unchanged line and also to have a title or a comment, this is all done after the generation. It's done in the front end. Let me actually show you the front end part of this. So this is inside use create code steps, which is a custom hooks, and inside of here we're using a use mutation from TanStack Start to run this asynchronously. And if you take a look at where we are using it, so it's inside this AI step preview dialog. We have a use effect that runs when the dialog is opened, and this is where things get interesting. We do the mapping inside of the component, so we have this map AI steps to snip frame steps, and if you jump in, this is where we create actually the content that is shown to the user, which is this snip frame. It's a bit more complex, and here we can see the logic behind like adding a new line for the comment, and we should also calculate the lines that are muted. So a little bit more work, but I like having this separation that you actually just make one API call and you just pass in literally the minimum that you need for the response, and you also expect the minimum from the AI, so it's really as deterministic as it gets. And then you can use real JavaScript functions to just calculate everything that can be done manually. I'm actually really enjoying using TanStack Start with the AI SDK. I might add it to one of the chapters of my upcoming course, Learn TanStack Start, which teaches you literally everything you need to know about TanStack Start. I've been diving really deep in this library in the last weeks. I have been, to be honest, also learning a lot myself, and a lot of these chapters that are here are going to be expanded. Like for example, this one with the middleware, I think this is going to be at least 3 chapters because there are different types of middlewares and you can combine them in different ways. There are some really interesting use cases there. And I'm also playing with the idea of having a mini chapter, also including how to use the AI SDK. If you're wondering about the AI SDK, I have been taking this course from Matt Pocock. This is a great course. This also has been the inspiration for me to create my own course. I have just been learning a lot, and I'm still in the first chapter. It's really hard to follow a course when you're creating your own. You have a full-time job and also a YouTube channel releasing videos every week, but I literally cannot wait to dive deeper into this. This is also really worth it. You might want to check it out if you want to add this kind of AI features to your app. I am not sponsored or anything by Matt. This is just a real recommendation from me. And if you want to keep up with the TanStack ecosystem, you should check out TanStack Weekly, which is my own newsletter where I just share what happened in the TanStack world. In the last issue, for example, I have talked about the recently released package TanStack hotkeys, about TanStack router on mobile, the new JavaScript library that Cloudflare created in a week, and also about a new feature in TanStack Start, which is import protection. And if you are using TanStack Start, then you should definitely know about the 4 rendering strategies that it offers. And for that, you can watch my latest video. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video. Ciao.